Veterans, listen up. One of the biggest mistakes people make in business is assuming that every business should be run the same way. That is false. The principles are the same. The application is not. At Free Enterprise Warriors, we teach what we call the 3 streets: Elm Street, Main Street, and Wall Street. Here is the key idea. A business on Elm Street, a business on Main Street, and a business on Wall Street all still have to make a profit. They all have to manage cash flow. They all have to understand their market. They all have to make sound decisions. Same principles. Different battlefield. On Elm Street, you may be a solo operator, a startup, a side business, or a family-run company. Maybe you're working from home. Maybe you have little or no payroll. At that level, you do not need complexity for the sake of complexity. You need clarity. You need to know your revenue, your basic expenses, your profit, and your cash position. A simple spreadsheet, reviewed monthly, may be enough to keep you oriented. Then, once or twice a year, you sit down with a competent accountant and make sure you are not missing deductions, structure, or opportunities. On Main Street, the stakes rise. Now you may have employees, overhead, vendors, equipment, and real operating pressure. At this level, guessing is dangerous. You need regular financial review. You need to understand your profit and loss statement, your cash flow, and your balance sheet. You need to know which products make money, which ones do not, where your cash is getting squeezed, and what decisions need to be made before a problem becomes a crisis. This is where many businesses fail, not because the owner is lazy, but because they are operating without the right cadence, the right numbers, and the right support. Then there is Wall Street. This is a different level of scale and discipline. At this stage, your books do not just need to be useful. They need to be clean, structured, and auditable. If you ever want to raise capital, be acquired, or build enterprise value, you cannot run your company like a casual small business. You need GAAP-oriented financials. You need systems. You need controls. You need decisions that stand up under scrutiny. Too many founders build something valuable, then lose leverage because the books are sloppy, the records are weak, or personal and business expenses got mixed together. That is why the 3 streets matter. Not because the principles change, because the requirements of execution change. What works on Elm Street may be too weak for Main Street. What works on Main Street may be completely inadequate for Wall Street. And this goes far beyond accounting. It applies to legal structure, hiring, marketing, systems, data security, financing. And it applies to every part of the business. A work-from-home founder does not need the same infrastructure as a company preparing for acquisition. A small neighborhood business does not need the same reporting system as a company seeking investors. But they do need to know what street they are on. That is where confusion destroys progress. People either overbuild too early or underbuild too long. Free Enterprise Warriors exists to stop that confusion. We help veterans understand the street they are on, the principles that govern business on every street, and the right next move for their stage of the journey. Elm Street builds stability. Main Street builds scale. Wall Street builds enterprise value. Same mission, different terrain, different tools, different level of discipline. That is the briefing.